We have a short presentation, and you will know it's short, because I asked Jerry for his bio, and he supplied me with 7 pages. So I'll read out all 7 pages and cut his time to do his presentation. That's a good deal, Jerry. But Captain Gouveia, who has chaired our Governance and Security Subcommittee, and we've started a trend last year. Ramesh Prasad, who's the chairman of our Economics and Finance Committee, made a short presentation, and it stayed in the press for 3 months. So Jerry, that's an incentive to you to be short. But Gerald Gouveia is known to all of you. He's a veteran airline and transport pilot, entrepreneur, a private sector leader, and a philanthropist with an excess of 40 years experience in the aviation and tourism sectors, the business community, relations in Guyana, the Caribbean, and further afield. A former military officer who served as chief pilot of the Air Corps of the Guyana Defense Force, Captain Gouveia is a graduate of the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University Flight Program in Florida. He's a fellow of the Center for Hemispheric Defense Studies at the National Defense University in Washington, D.C. Jerry also attended George Washington University, pursuing studies in aviation safety and security. He also studied aircraft accident investigations at the United States National Transportation Safety Board Academy in Washington, D.C. Jerry is a past chairman of the Private Sector Commission of Guyana and is a strong private sector advocate who has served in numerous positions in the private sector. Currently, he heads the PSA subcommittee on governance and security matters. He has been integrally involved in national elections monitoring since 1997 as a member and head of the PSC's Electoral Observer Team. As a demonstration of his commitment to efficient and effective electoral procedures, Captain Gouveia visited Jamaica at his own expense to observe the fingerprint scanning system used by the Jamaican Elections Commission for the voters list. On his return, share pertinent information with all stakeholders. The system was introduced in Guyana. The system was subsequently introduced in Guyana. A quarter of a century ago, Gerald Gouveia and his wife Debbie shared a vision for the establishment of a business enterprise that is today among the leading service industry providers in Guyana. They founded Roraima Airways, where he is now the chief executive and chairman of the company. Of course, you know, Jerry, governance issues take shape there. The trend now is chief executive separate from chairman. Jerry also owns the aircraft maintenance wing of the company, hotels, a nature resort, a travel agency, a ground handling agency, a crew and passenger executive lounges, which I'm sure many of you have used over the years, aviation security service, and airline catering. Jerry has represented the private sector on many state boards, which includes the Gaming Authority, the Privatization Board, the Central Housing and Planning Authority, the Traffic Advisory Authority, the Guyana Tourism Authority, the Law and Order Commission, the Indigenous Peoples Commission, and the Broadcast Authority. If you thought I was finished, you're wrong. The Lands and Surveys Board, chairman of the Prison and Sentence Management Board, Vice Chairman of the Geology and Mines Commission Board, Director of the CJIA Board, Member of the Security Committee of the Chedijagan and Ogle International Airports. Jerry was appointed by the government of Barbados. The government of Barbados is the honorary consul of Barbados in Guyana. He often do not like you to tell him that Guyanese are still sitting on the bench at the airport in Barbados, but I will remind him again. Jerry, this is interesting. He is the holder of a black belt in karate and judo, and is an ardent adventurer and also a mountain biking and powerboating enthusiast. So that, please don't mess with Jerry, right? Jerry is also the recipient of one of Guyana's highest national awards, the Golden Arrow of Achievement. Captain Gouveia maintains a keen interest in socio-economic and political issues in Guyana, while remaining non-partisan and committed to public service and the full realization of Guyana's potential for the benefit of all Guyanese. Jerry's commitment to service in Guyana spanned 5 decades, beginning in the Guyana National Service. When you have a fantastic patriot, you have to have 7 pages of his curriculum vitae. But I assure you, Jerry, if this was written for you to get a job, you're employed. Please, address us.
Minister Harmon, members of the head table, excellencies of the diplomatic corps, colleagues in the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the media. I have a very simple task, a short task, and I will really try to do it very short in duration. But just to say to you, I bring a very interesting perspective to the table because I served on both sides of the fence. I was once a public sector officer, as a military officer, and then when I came to the private sector, I was able to bring the experience from both sides. And in the very early days of doing that, the private sector and the government fought every day. They really couldn't see eye to eye. The private sector brought their egos, their bag of money to the table, and they criticized everything government did because government could not move as fast as the private sector. I think we fail to understand government also had different levels of bureaucracy to do things, and so sometimes the private sector was intolerant. I would say that over the last 20 years, the private sector have grown more understanding, and I think the relationship between government and the private sector evolved into something that the IDB recognized, and when the IDB funded the competitive strategy. And I think a lot of people did not understand that the competitive strategy was funded by the IDB, particularly to develop a working relation between the public and the private sector so that when private sector views and private sector engagements happen with a government minister, it don't stay there. It is channeled into a decision-making body that the experts of the IDB designed so that it end up at the desk of the president at the Competitiveness Council, chaired by the president himself. And we have seen the relationship with the public and the private sector move from one of hostility in the media every day. In the early 90s, we have seen the transition today where public and private sector sit and talk around a table. And I am happy to say that 2017 is in fact a signature year because it's 25 years. 25 years for everything. It was 25 years since Jimmy Carter came and gave us those elections in 1992, Mr. Prasad, where you played such an important role of the Private Sector Commission supporting the electoral process in Guyana in 1992. But it also signaled the year the private sector was born, Private Sector Commission, in fact. So it's 25 years of the Private Sector Commission, it's 25 years of the Tourism and Hospitality Association, and coincidentally it's 25 years of my own company. And I think in collaboration with PAG this year, I think we are going to be doing many things. We hired 25 flight attendants for Dynamic to coincide every year of that 25 years. We've, between the aircraft operators at Ogle, we are going to be flying 25 young children around the city in both ANIT helicopter and Air Services helicopter and the other planes around the Ogle to signify those things. So there's a lot of work being done to signify this 25 years. Very, very important. But as I want to say it also, when I came back from the Defense University, I came back with a different paradigm. In the early days, the private sector was very careful about some things they get involved with. Governance and security was one of the things that the private sector figured that we should not deal with. We should only deal with issues of commerce. Well, when I was at the Defense University, along with President Granger himself and many others in this present administration and the past, we were told very clearly, there's nothing in our country that was none of our business. Everything was our business. Every policeman, everything the Defense Force did, everything our national security did, every part of this political activity in this country is our business. And so when I came back to Guyana and got involved in the private sector, it was a new dispensation. Getting involved in elections, Yesu Prasad and his team in 1992 started that whole trend of getting local observers, not only foreigners to look after our business, but that the private sector will get involved and make our observations of the elections. And that started and continued, and it continued. In 2017, I put it to you that one of the greatest challenges facing Guyana today, the greatest single challenge facing Guyana today, Mr. Harman, Mr. Chairman of the Private Sector Commission, is the creation of jobs. Creation of jobs is a serious problem our country is facing. We have thousands of young people graduating from the University of Guyana every year, and they're searching for jobs, and they can't find them, and they're leaving Guyana. And we're not only talking about jobs, we're talking about proper paying jobs, where these young people could, in fact, buy a house, buy a car, have their families, go on vacation, and that they could really have a vision of their life in Guyana for the next 20, 30, 40 years. A lot of our young people, every day I looked out of my window at Juke Lodge, I see 500 young people lined up in front of the U.S. Embassy looking for a better life. We promised them a good life in Guyana. We must create it. All the leaders, together. And a good life is not just talk. We have to create these jobs. And how do we create this job? How do we create these jobs? Government don't create jobs. Government create the enabling environment. Investors create those jobs. And so the leaders in Guyana, the political leaders, the private sector leaders, the church leaders, the union leaders, every day we must work very hard to create and enhance and foster investor confidence. Everything we do. Local and foreign investors. And I dare say we're not doing a good job. The fact that we're not creating enough jobs for our young people, the fact that we keep promising them, and it's an elusive promise, elusive dream, we need to stop it. We need to create that enabling environment to foster and enhance investor confidence. And changes of government should not stop the continuity. The relationship between the public and the private sector must live on the platform created by the IDB. The IDB brought 50 consultants into this country and worked with us in the private sector. I remember days and days, myself and Kit Nascimento sat with people talking in the tourism clusters. We sat with people in the forestry clusters, in the manufacturing clusters. And we work hard together to create this working relationship. Very sad today that is not working any longer. That our communication with government and the private sector is happening in isolation, in isolated ministries. But they're not connecting back to some kind of decision-making forum. And that is something that concerns the private sector. Even working with government is something that concerns the private sector. 2 weeks ago, the World Bank came to us. The World Bank came and said, we want to get the private sector on board with us because we are here to talk about PPPs, or P3s, as they like to call them these days. And there are many members around the table of the private sector said, what? We are very scared of getting into business with government because we are not sure if the government change what the next government will do. Whether the people in the SARA administration will come to recover whatever business you do with government. And this is about investor confidence. So whatever we do with government need to be properly embedded in legislation to foster investor confidence. So that when governments change, new political people and leaders don't create the kind of fear and apprehension. We are not for 1 minute saying that if there are illegal things happening, that it must not be dealt with. But we are very concerned about the relationship and involving ourselves in partnerships, in privatization deals that could then come under serious scrutiny politically. And so we must have continuity to foster and enhance investor confidence. Political stability, exceptionally important. The issue of GCOM. The issue of GCOM. The private sector have been involved in this process for a long time. And all the private sector say we want fair and free elections, and we want election results in 24 hours. And the private sector say we could do that by doing three things: biometric identification of the voter, electronic tabulation that the Canadian government offers us, and declaring election results at the returning officer level in the regions. We should be able to get election results in 24 hours. This private sector is extremely concerned because we move in economic cycles of every 5 years. We have an election, we have uncertainty, and it disrupts the economy, disrupts job creation. Institutional stability and continuity. The issue of contracts. If you enter a contract with government, I am not entering a contract with the PNC government, the PUP government. I am entering a contract with the government of my country. And that contract must live through changes of governments. That if the private sector enter any kind of deal, any kind of contract with one government, it must be respected from government to government. And so we've got to have the legislative framework to do that. Less, you will have less investor confidence. And less investor confidence means an issue of job creation. Public safety. Public safety, very, very important. I can't thank the British enough, the British government enough, for coming to the second time to our rescue. The first time the American government came to and offered to have a complete defense and security sector reform because it was recognized that our defense and security systems and institutions were done back in the 1960s. All of the threats and challenges had changed for the defense forces, and it needed to be reformed. We scrapped the defense part of it, and the British came forward with the security sector reform, which ran into a stone wall a couple of years ago. Much to the dissatisfaction of the Private Sector Commission, myself and General McLean worked tirelessly with the consultants that came down to talk about the security sector reform, which is vitally important. Our police force needs to be modernized, not only with equipment, but with training, culture, and so on. And we are very, very pleased that the British government came back and the Private Sector Commission is working close with that body, and we are hoping that that will be fast-tracked. It's taken too long. We need our police force to be retrained. We need our police force to be modernized. We make the point that for the last 15 years we have seen political leaders go to bed at night, and when the citizens call 911, it rings out. We have seen this happen over and over, and I cannot believe that any leader in any country will go to bed at night when the 911 system is not working. That is our lifeline to safety. And over the Private Sector Commission talks about this, and these are things that frighten the private sector. These are things that frighten private investors, and it affects investor confidence. And so I urge the leaders that listen to me today that we must be obsessed with job creation, and we must do everything to create the enabling environment. And finally, if the tree falls in the middle of the jungle and no one is there to see it, did it make a noise? It's debatable, right? But it's just like Guyana is a beautiful, beautiful country, beautiful people, amazing landscape. But out of the 7.5 billion people in the world, 95% of them don't even know that Guyana exists. They think we are Ghana or Guinea. They think we are drinking Kool-Aid with Jim Jones. Or they think we are running from house to house with a bulletproof vest like Iraq. When in fact Guyana is a beautiful country with beautiful people speaking English on the continent of South America with amazing natural resources, but we are not telling the world. And we love foreigners. The private sector starts with government and encourage the creation of the investment climate so foreigners could come to Ghana and have equal rights like us. The private sector don't fight against foreign investors. We welcome foreign investors. Why isn't our country loaded and flooded with foreign investors? Because people don't know, and because we are not marketing. So while Jamaica is spending $100 million to market that island, we are spending $500,000 US. And it's a shame. I went to the World Travel Market. I see Barbados with an amazing booth for $500,000, Guyana with a little desk in a corner. We should not go if we will do that to our country. And so marketing our country is vitally important. We have to tell the world what a wonderful country Guyana is. It's open for business, the business opportunities, and we are losing the opportunity every day. And if we don't do this, the talk of a good life will be an elusive dream. So I urge the leaders in this room Let us all be obsessed with job creation to really give meaning to the good life. Thank you very much.